Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thanks for having us, Ariana.
So, obviously the show has a large Latino and Black and brown cast. How did you go about having the show be authentic to that experience?
Yeah.
But also not whitewash it, but also have it mass appeal so that obviously it would be successful.
Well, you know, a lot of that came from where, it came. I wasn't trying to be self-righteous or I wasn't trying to be righteous or woke about it. A lot of it just came from wanting to be authentic. And I grew up in Inglewood, and then as an adult, I lived a lot of my life in South Central. So, you know, where I grew up and where I lived my whole life, it always was Black and Latino. So, you know, I didn't grow up in like East LA where it's mostly a Latino population. I grew up in South LA. So a lot of that was wanting to see that portrayed authentically. Yeah. You know, and then also I think the way it came off authentically that I'm really proud of is I thought if we look at it less through the lens of race and more through the lens of class.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're all broke, you know, that we're all broke. Like a big example for me was like in episode 6 where the mom is where the recycling is getting stolen.
Yes.
By a local homeless guy. And I wanted to make sure that that's something that bonded the Latino neighbors and the Black neighbors, is that they were mad that somebody's stealing their cans because they take recycling for money.
Yes.
And that was a big thing. I mean, at one point when I was growing up, there's a local homeless dude stealing recycling in our neighborhood. And nobody thought about it as a race thing. Everybody was like, you're taking money from us. Yes. We're broke. You know? So a lot of it was just like, having people in the show speak honestly about race in a way that feels authentic to the world. You know, like when Chef Percy is in the fight episode with us and he says like, well, I'm not gonna help two Mexicans beat up a Black guy. Like when I go there, I'm gonna join his side. And then Luis respecting that. Yeah. And also a lot of that just came from like, you know, growing up in that neighborhood and having like, and sometimes like the idea that when you grow up in this neighborhood that's half Black, half Latino, sometimes there's racial tension, but also sometimes there's moments where you guys are bonded, you know, and showing that honestly in a comedic way. Yeah, and where nobody wins and nobody loses, where everybody, I think wanted to make the show was making sure that nobody's 100% good and nobody's 100% bad.
Yes.
And treating everybody that way.
Yeah. How did you go, though, about making sure that the comedy was grounded, but still funny and outlandish? Like the whole thing in the season finale where he's just like, I was just too big, and everyone is just crying. And this is like a normal conversation. Like, how do you guys go about it that it's not too slapstick, but it's still outlandish and still a comedy?
Well, you know, I think for a lot of us, and it was in the performances too, which Frankie does such a great job, is making sure that we present funny stuff in a serious manner. So the idea of some guy complaining about having a big penis, but not being silly about it, like being earnest, and being genuinely hurt.
It really is ruining our lives.
Like, or like whatever problems Luis is going through, like making sure that, as silly as they sound, to present them in a very earnest fashion is very funny to us.
Yes. Is any of it improvised at all?
There was a lot of room for improvisation. You know, Frankie comes from like improv and acting and stand-up comedy, and we're all stand-up comedians. So a lot of it, sometimes we'd have a lot of takes where me and the co-creators would say, let's improvise. Yeah. And then, you know, Jamar Neighbors, who plays Chef Percy, did some improvisation. Frankie, even people like Michael Imperioli thought of lines to improvise. And that was a big thing for us.
As for Frankie, for you, as term as acting, how do you also kind of keep it grounded, and that we are very sympathetic to Luis and what he's going through, and we're rooting for him, but he's also just very silly and very authentic?
Yeah. I would say that mostly comes from my family, like my real life experiences, spending time, I don't know, just thinking of, you know, tapping into the layers of pain, actually. And then because, you know, some of the funniest people I grew up around were, you know, in and out of jail and, you know, in these dark places, and that's the way they dealt with that darkness was, you know, kind of deflecting it with humor and be like, nah, it's all good and da-da-da. But sometimes that create some of the funniest things you ever heard. So I don't know. I think I really just kind of tapped into that, like feeling my family, feeling my father, and all the struggles that they had, and just remembering us being poor, all living in a one-bedroom apartment when we were younger, and then seeing where we're at now, and then and humor. I witnessed humor get my mom and dad through a lot of tough times, and so I think Luis really grasped onto that and like held it in his heart, and I think it speaks in his performances.
Yeah, you guys are obviously both comic. Is that how you kind of got into comedy, kind of laughing through life in a way, especially the harder times?
Yeah.
I think I laugh a little more than Chris, but
yeah. I think for me, stand-up was always like cathartic and wanting to laugh. Like I always loved comedy growing up, and a lot of it, when I started stand-up comedy, a lot of it was like, I have all these thoughts and I want to make them funny. And I have all these thoughts that I think are funny and cathartic and dark or subversive, and how can I present that in a way that's funny to like an audience? And yeah. So
is Julio and Luis like influenced by any people in your real life or people you've encountered?
Yeah.
He has a real cousin named Luis.
Yeah. You know, I think what makes the character Luis so special is that it's pulled from all these real influences. Like I based that off of my cousin, and in the writing I try to implement a lot of my cousin in there. And then Frankie, who we have similar backgrounds and grew up in a very similar way, he brought in a lot of his, like, what he felt from his dad, his family, some of his cousins. So it's really, I think that was a lot. And then the character of Julio is really, a lot of things that happen to that character or what he goes through are influenced by things that happen in my real life. And I wouldn't say I'm 100% the character, but there are aspects of the character that are based off of me.
What would you say some of the aspects are? Are you really into punk music?
Yeah, really into like punk music. So I wanted to make sure that that was an aspect of the show without being try hard. Just making it like, not making a big deal out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like that's what he's into. He doesn't talk about it. It's just you see him like with the shirt or the music he's listening to or the books he's reading. So you know, stuff like that.
That's one of my favorite things actually, is like, because I mean, he's just an overall just student in general. Like even when he was opening for me, we'd be on the road. He always had a book with him. It could be a history of punk music in the 80s or something, or he was just always a student of film and stuff like that. And so to see it all come together when he was writing this show and putting it together, it's like, I don't know, I just have the utmost respect for that. And then the shirts that he chooses to wear, like these bands that, like, you know, not everybody knows, and like, but it's so cool for me, even if I don't know who the band is, just to just see people like, oh my gosh, look at the shirt he's wearing, I love that band, and da da da. It's like this cut, like in the cutty stuff that people, like the people that get it, they like really appreciate it because they've never seen that before on TV, you know. So it's like he did a really good job of doing that, you know.
Yeah, I feel like especially for people of color that like in quote unquote wider music or something of that nature, that's very silly, but I feel like it's becoming more acceptable, especially with you like wearing the band t-shirts and stuff. Like I can like tons of different music. Like that doesn't like push me into any category, which I think is super rewarding. So Hugs Not Thugs, how did you build this world, and then also how did it feel to like literally just tear it down and then you have to start from scratch in season 2?
Helping build it was really interesting because it was influenced by a few real life organizations that, like, you know, a big influence was Dave's Killer Bread.
Oh yeah.
Dave, you know, that's an organization that actually was started by this guy Dave, who went to prison and then started like this company and was hiring felons, ex-felons, and then, you know, places like Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles. There's a place here in Texas, I think in Dallas, called Cornbread Hustlers. That was like all these places that I thought were really interesting. And also the idea was like, how do we, in an interesting subversive way, incorporate this gang element to the show, but show these people trying to better their lives in a comedic way. Like sometimes they overcompensate, like, you know, by going out of their ways to want to celebrate somebody's birthday when they don't want to celebrate their birthday, you know, and like, or finding these men and women who are finding new ways to express themselves emotionally, you know. But a lot of it, the idea of tearing it down was an idea we had because we didn't want to be stuck in making a workplace sitcom.
Yeah.
We didn't, because that can get old. So a lot of it was kind of like, let's tear it down. Let's tear it down, so it forces us to come up with something new second season, and it forces us to think of, do we bring it back? If we do, how do we do it? And if we don't, how do we address it? So just kind of those interesting ways, and it was really like writing ourselves into a hole.
Yeah.
And then finding creative ways to dig ourselves out.
Yeah, it's definitely a risk, because especially you build all these characters that I assume that you like and that we love, and it's just like, how do you integrate them into this world and it doesn't feel forced, or do you not integrate it? Like, how did you kind of go about season 2 in a way?
Well, season 2 is tricky because we closed the place down, but a lot of these characters mean a lot to us, like the Chef Percy character, you know, played by two of our neighbors, and a lot of that was like, how do we find, who like as a character means a lot to Julio and Luis, and like, how do we find a way to bring them back, and how do we find a way to bring back the Minister Leonard Payne, who's played by Michael Imperioli, who to Julio is the mentor.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of these guys, a lot of these huggers, these men and women who call themselves huggers, he helped change their lives. So it was really interesting for second season to we released a sneak peek, and he's back, and so Chef Percy. So it was finding a very creative, authentic way to bring him back was difficult, but worth it.
Yes. Yeah. Why can't Julio commit to Maggie? Just leave her alone or commit.
Yeah. Well, that's what I love. That's actually like, I love a show. I didn't, with the Julio and Maggie situation, I didn't want to create a Jim and Pam situation, or a Sam and Diane situation where, will they, won't they?
Yeah.
I wanted to create a relationship where you go, just break up.
Yes.
You're not good for each other. It's clear that both of you are toxic for each other.
Yeah.
It's, one's not worse than they're both bad for each other. So a lot of that was trying to find a way where it's like, how do we create a new relationship? Whereas, like I said, a lot of TV shows you look and is it, well, won't they get together?
Yeah.
And you almost expect every couple now to get together on TV because you've seen it before. But we thought, like, how would it be? It would be so interesting to see a couple that is bad for each other.
Yeah.
And you almost are rooting for them to find someone else. To find, because they both deserve to be happy, and they clearly can't be happy with each other. So a lot of that was basing it off of real relationships that I was in, where it was like, where I dated someone who was like, it was hard to let go of them because they were integrated into my family.
Yes.
You know, and how do you, and realizing that sometimes maybe somebody is with you because they're just part of your family in a way.
Yeah, and it's more authentic than say, like, if there was a love trial between Maggie and the cousins, like, how many love trials in real life have you actually encountered? Like, zero, because no one would put up with that. But someone will put up with an ex-boyfriend from high school just because, hey, it's our pattern.
It's our pattern, and that was based off a real thing. I dated someone from when I was 18 till I was 27, and we dated on and off. We'd break up one year, get together the next year. She knew my family.
Your mom's always asking about her, so you're like, oh,
she'd come around. Even when during the time we were broken up, she would be at family parties. I'd be annoyed, but I knew her family. So it was just one of those things where it was like we met each other when we were 18, and we broke up when we were 27, 28 finally.
Yeah. What were, for both of you, what were some of your favorite scenes to shoot, in that it was even sometimes hard to not break character?
Do you have a favorite scene? In season 2 or?
Oh no, in season 1.
Sorry.
You can tell me all about season 2 if you want to, even if it's out.
I would say, I don't know, maybe there was a scene that got really weird when we're trying to save the center with the billionaires. For me, it was like this moment when I realized, I had Fred Armisen on one side, who was obviously a legend, and Michael Imperioli, who's this Emmy Award-winning actor here, and then my best friend across the table here, and so there was just a lot going on in my mind of just like, oh my, like, just like obviously super excited and grateful, but also, hey homie, like, you gotta get this character to, gotta stay in character and not break, because I'm so excited and I'm and I just can't believe it's like surreal, you know?
Yeah.
But then it's like, hey, you belong here, and let's get this dialed in. And the scene is so like, you know, I'm the only one at the table that doesn't see how messed up the situation is.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
I'm actually like, oh, well, pick me, you know, I'm gonna do this. And then, so
For me,
I'll say that.
Man, it was hard. Sometimes we would break so much when we were filming, especially the fight episode.
Yeah.
There's an episode where it's Julio, Luis, and Chef Percy in the band together.
Yeah.
And we're just and there's so much bickering that it was honestly sometimes really hard. We would break all the time. That a few times, some of the showrunners would come up to us and go, guys, like we really can't. We're wasting time. You guys gotta not break.
Yeah.
And that scene was really funny, but also like the whole fight episode was really funny. But there was just, you know, watching Michael Imperioli in the last episode, you know, have this breakdown about his gigantic penis and how it's ruined his life was it was so funny that it was hard not to break.
Yes, and my last question is, I feel like after each episode, my mom and I would debate about it.
Yeah.
Who is the fool?
Everybody. Actually, everybody. That's the thing. This fool is everybody. It's kind of a play off of just how like Latinos in LA talk, which is like, hey, what's up, fool?
Yeah.
But also a literal way of like, who? It's a literal play. It's like everybody's the fool.
Yeah.
Everybody. That's kind of, I think, I wanted nobody to be smarter than anybody in the show.
Yeah.
Everybody's the fool. My character is a fool. He's a fool. Chef Percy, Michael Imperioli, the mom, everybody.
We're all broke.
Yeah.
We're all broke. Nobody's killing it in life really in this show, you know? It's
I was saying all the time like that. I'll just say, oh, this fool, and it's usually me referring to my siblings.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I get it, I love it.
Oh, thanks.
But thank you so much for taking the time
Ariana.
to talk to
It
me.
means a lot. Thank you so much.
It means a lot to me. I'm being professional over here, but I'm like,
Appreciate you.
But thank you so much. Congrats on season 2.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
And awesome. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.